Tom, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, man. So, if you guys don't know what aviation is, aviation is where you're selling private jets, and that's what Tom does. He's a founder of the Ultimate Jet Guide. I personally ran into him when I was in sales, specifically in starting. So, Tom started as a youth pastor, and my first question for you, Tom, is what was the biggest impact from being a youth pastor that helped you in sales specifically, man?
Well, first of all, Joseph, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. In terms of transitioning from into aviation sales, high ticket sales, luxury sales, I learned a lot from my time as a youth pastor. I think one of the things I learned was just time management. When I first started out, I was, pretty much left to my own devices. The pastor and everybody at the church just kind of let me do what I needed to do to get the job done, and I think that kind of set me up for success well into my future, because I was able to handle time management. I was able to handle task management, get projects done, and just do what had to be done, whether that was just knocking something off, or it was going even further than what was expected of me. I learned a lot from that perspective. At the same time, I also learned a lot about sales and marketing through youth ministry, because a lot of what I was doing was I was having conversations with students and with parents, and these were not just baseline, hey, come to the youth group, but I was having conversations that were really impactful, conversations that had to go deeper than just the surface. And so when it came to selling private jets and the conversations I was having with total strangers as I was calling these high net worth individuals, I was not afraid to ask them the harder questions, or just slow down and listen to them and not feel like I had to get my sales pitch across. I feel as though my time in ministry helped me learn how to communicate in such a way where I could listen to somebody, let them feel like they're being heard and being respected, and then provide a response that wasn't just a canned response. Because if there's anything people know, is teenagers are the ultimate lie detector tests. They can easily see through if you're not being authentic. And so I learned how to communicate effectively and authentically. And I think that helped give me a leg up when I started talking to private jet owners.
No, and yeah, and it's a big gap from not doing any type of aviation besides when you were 16, trying to get your license, but you couldn't handle it, man. So I really want to go into like what gives someone the guts to go out there and start. And besides, because I know an accent, you landed into the aviation space, which is take note, is just always finding new opportunities, guys. Is Tom, he didn't have no experience. He thought he was just going to get another sales job. He didn't even know he was going to start selling private jets. After you find out, man, that you're going to not be selling, you found out that you just started out selling something you've never sold before. You thought you were just going to be a regular salesperson. Now you're selling private jets. How were you able to handle, first of all, that decision? And second of all, what were some things, because you never sold anything this much, what were some things you did to prepare yourself for this battle you're going to go through?
Yeah, when I first, interviewed for the job and found out that, it was in fact selling private jets, to me, I was surprised because I didn't understand that there was actually that much of a market, that there was enough volume in the marketplace for individuals who wanted to own a pre-owned private jet. I thought if you wanted a private jet, just went to, Textron or Honda Jet and you just ordered a brand new one. I didn't even conceive of, oh, there's probably a marketplace for aircraft that have been previously owned before. And so once they kind of explained to me how it works and the marketplace that existed, um, you know, 70% of all aircraft transactions were happening in the United States. And the fact that a lot of them were pre-owned, well, I was like, okay, well, there's clearly, success leaves clues. There's been brokers at this agency that have found success. They're expecting me to make six figures in my first year. So the product was cool. The business opportunity was cool. And so that's what kind of encouraged me to just jump in. We had some money saved so that my family wasn't going to starve. And as the first year kind of rolled out, I invested a lot of time and a lot of money, more so in year 2 and 3, but a lot of time and some money
Mhm.
into becoming a better salesperson, into becoming a better marketer. So I had 3 days of training when I first started as a jet broker, and that's all the training I really got, unless I had a question that I would bring directly to the manager. So I had to do all my own learning and growing kind of on my own, and that was either going to happen on the phone, getting my teeth kicked in by owners and other brokers, and it was going to happen because I would go and pursue, hey, how do I be a better salesperson? How do I answer objections? How do I present my offer in a way that is intriguing to a buyer, and not just be an order taker and say, okay, what are you looking for? Yep, yep, yep. Okay, I'll go find it. Or yep, yep, yep. No, this doesn't do it. Good luck. I'll talk to you another time. Like, how do I have systems and processes in place to follow up with people, if they're not ready to buy right now? All that stuff, I had to invest the time and the money to learn how to do that at a higher level so I could perform at a higher level.
Yeah, and that's it's 100%. I do agree. I know you're a big Grant Cardone fan also. And I do want to mention that self-education is everything. You go in to the
Hmm.
world, and by that time someone comes out of high school or college, they don't pick up another book in the rest of their life. And
Hmm.
I feel like we're missing that, especially in my generation. I try to read a book a day. And I'm a different type of person. I'm still younger. I'm driven, so a lot of people don't have the mindset. But the way I was able to build my mindset, the way I think now and the way I perceive things was from self-education.
Hmm.
And I know you're a big captor of that. So, like, besides writing your own book, man, which is amazing, you're an author. If you want to give the audience kind of a summary of your book, I didn't get the chance to read it, but I'm definitely going to pick up my own after our call, man. So, tell me a little bit more about the book. What inspired you to write it? And
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I've got it right over here next to me. It's called The Ultimate Jet Guide, and I wrote the book specifically for individuals who wanted to buy a private jet. There was at the time no other book out there that was explaining how buying a jet worked. Since then, now there's two or three out there, but I wrote it because it was really a culmination of a lot of frequently asked questions that I was getting. I wrote it because if there were any other books out there, they were very much from the perspective of speaking the language of a broker. So they came from the perspective of, like, using words like acquisitions and programs, and what they were explaining and expressing was accurate and correct and very wise, but it wasn't as approachable as I would have liked if I was a buyer, because I came into this, I'm only right now 4 or 5 years into the industry. And so if someone's coming into buying their very first jet, they probably don't even have, any aviation knowledge. So I wanted to write a book for people that didn't have any experience with aviation. And we broke it down really simply. Should you charter, rent it? Should you buy one? Or should you invest in one where you buy one and lease it back to a charter company? And what does it look like? What are the basic steps to do that? And make it really accessible. I mean, a buddy of mine, Big Earn, Flying with Big Earn on YouTube. I just did a podcast with him a week or two ago, and he said he read it in a day or two. So that's exactly what I wanted. That's how I process information. I want to make a purchase, whether it's technology or real estate or whatever it might be. I learn within a day or so, and I just kind of really over a weekend or something hammer into the information. So I wanted to make a resource that someone who was a reader, even though I'm personally I'm more of a video guy, but I wanted to make the information accessible for someone who preferred to read, and that's what became the Ultimate Jet Guide.
I love that, man. I'm also an avid reader, so I love going through. And the problem with visual is you only can watch a video 2 times X.
Mm.
Reading, if you're accelerated reader like myself, you can go through something in a couple hours. And that's one of the things. But you write the book because you already know you had the problem. Like, I'm starting this, no one else did this. Why hasn't anyone? This is a big problem. People need to understand how to do this, and you solved that problem personally.
Mhm.
And it's phenomenal, man. So I really want to go into your selling point. So when you're selling a jet, how can the average person, say average Joe, the average 18 to 35, 40-year-old, how are they able to sell a jet? Because you specialize in that. You specialize in taking anyone from not being able to sell something to giving them the training, sales training they need, getting them into aviation with no aviation experience. I find that phenomenal. Tell me a little more about that, man.
Yeah, so I think my background in youth ministry kind of lent itself to being predisposed to wanting to coach others, to wanting to be a mentor, to wanting to show others. My whole tagline is pulling back the curtain on private aviation. And so that can work from the buyer's perspective and telling people how to buy a jet, or from the broker's perspective. What I found was in 2022, when I left my former brokerage and started out on my own, one of my go-to um, tasks was creating content, content marketing. And I just found a lot of people asking me, "Hey, how did you become a jet broker? Can you teach me how to be a jet broker?" And so I saw an opportunity there, and I happen to like teaching. A lot of brokerages, they're really good sales guys, but when it comes to making the sales skills duplicatable, they kind of will fall short there. And I think that's at the shortcomings of the brokerage, because if you can duplicate yourself, then your business can grow, it can scale. And so I think, while my business, I'm not, doing transactions at the level I was when I was just a broker. I'm taking a step back to train people, but I think in the long term, it will make a huge difference. And so at the end of the day, I just think that I have a gifting of communication, and I have a passion for helping others. So that coach mentor role really appeals to me. And so because I just started with no aviation background only a few years ago, I understand the struggles. I understand, what they're going through, and I understand how to get through them and what it looks like on the other side of that. And so, when people go to, my social media pages and they find me, and I show them how to become a part of the Circle community and learn how to be a jet broker, I just think there's a lot of opportunity. And it's not just, this is one thing I would really want to make, kind of clear for everyone. you know, Being a jet broker isn't because you grew up with aviation and you just can't wait to sell private jets. For me, being a jet broker was just about making money. I wanted to make more money than I was making before. The vehicle that happened to drop into my lap was selling private jets. So even if you're not Googling how do I sell private jets, but you just want to learn how to make more money, I'm telling you, I have a vehicle in aviation sales that can help you make, more money.
And I find that phenomenal, man, because a lot of people need that. A lot of people need to understand that you can do anything, and it's just if you really put your mind to it and you come from that coaching aspect, so you understand, hey, you might not be great at the start. You might
Mhm.
have you might not be making money, but just like any other sales is everything. If you guys don't know, almost 90% of billionaires come from sales. Sales is key from the date, from the car you drive, from the person you date for the rest of your life, the person you marry, to the car, to the house you have. Everything is a negotiation. Even this conversation is a negotiation. It's just much more passive. You guys understand that you can change your life, and Tom specializes in that. And I love that you come off the coaching aspect, man, because I can tell you when I was younger, I didn't have I didn't have parents, so I had a lot of people trying to help me and trying to help me on my journey on becoming successful. And when you have that as a person, you feel so much better because at the end of the day,
Mm.
we're all human. We all have problems. And when you have someone that's coming out there, hey, I want to help you, that makes you impossible as a person. Now, going into your team, man, as I know, you're the first digital only, like decentralized private aviation company. How 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 what were your thoughts? Because first you never did aviation. Then you're coming and you're changing the industry by doing this for the first time. What were your thought processes behind it, and what were you trying to do? Because I find it fascinating.
No, I appreciate that, and yeah, that's true. It is a decentralized brokerage in many ways. So when people started asking me, how do I become a broker? Can I teach them? I started thinking about, okay, well, I could teach somebody, and then they can work with me. So what would the brokerage that I would want look like? And a couple of points came out. Number one, it would be agent focused. So I want what's best for the agent, and I want to be able to train, educate, and create brokers that would raise the bar of aviation, so that the next generation of aircraft brokers would be better than the current generation, and better in however you want to look at that, whether that's more sales or that's better marketing. Or for me, really, it was more just about in terms of professionalism. How much better can they be in terms of, really holding on to that idea of what it means to be a professional jet broker and not being kind of, a slimy, used car salesman kind of a vibe. So I wanted to raise that. So I wanted to make it very competitive in terms of the pricing. I'm sorry, the compensation for the brokers. So, I was dealing with a 40-60% split when I was working at another brokerage. So if I brought in a $10,000 commission, I would get $4,000 and the agency would get $6,000. And that was the same for all 3 years of my career there. Even though from year 1 to year 2, I doubled my income. From year 2 to year 3, I doubled my income. My commission split was always the same. And so when I sat down to speak with the owner, it was just made very clear to me, like, you are a salesperson. So that's your job. Like, we take care of all the overhead, and just be content with the split, because it's not going to change, because the business model is based on you are a salesperson. And that's fine. Like, I get it. It's definitely the majority of the brokerages out there. They have, salespeople, and they have their split. And then once the salesperson does really well, maybe they go out and do their own thing after a non-compete clause kind of a thing. Or they go into another industry, or they move up, and they go into a managerial position. But I just wanted something for myself, right? I wanted to take control of my schedule. I wanted to try and do something on my own. That's why I started the brokerage. And so when it comes to being a cloud-based brokerage, we very much model it off of similar, real estate models, like an EXP, right? So, you know, I, I'm doing business all over the world right now. I've got listings all over the country. And so I even had a listing that's in Australia. So I can do this from anywhere with my clients. So why would I expect my brokers to have to come to my place of business in Sarasota? It just didn't make sense. I didn't need the overhead. They don't need to like uproot their lives. Why am I putting obstacles in between them achieving their dreams through aviation just because I want them in the same room as me? It just didn't make sense anymore to me. So yeah, we were like, okay, let's be remote. Why not? That makes more sense. Let's change the commission structure so that if you sell more, you get more of a commission split. So our agents can make up to an 80% cut of the commission. You make a $10,000 sale, you're keeping $8,000, and we're only keeping, a small portion of that. We have core values, one of which is education. And so we're doing daily training. Like, that's part of who we are as brokers. So I wanted to make that part of a culture of who we are. So it was going to be remote. It was going to be competitive for commissions. It was going to be, rooted in training and education. And it's been really cool to kind of watch it grow over the last year.
It's just phenomenal, man, and it's unique, it's valuable, and I do see this a lot when people are able to disrupt industries and make something new happen and innovate. Innovation is key. Now, you might not see results in the first couple of years, but when you innovate for a long period of time, you play long-term games with long-term people. Naval
Mhm.
talks about this. He owns one of the biggest hedge. He works with one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. He's the founder of AngelList, and this guy's phenomenal.
Mhm.
And when you have the ability to play long-term games with long-term people and innovate in that industry and be able to take charge, you can destroy, make more money, lots of money, very lucrative, and also make a bigger impact, which he's looking to do. So, Tom, I want to go in. I know you're originally, so you live in Timeline. Am I correct? You grew up in New Jersey.
Yep, that's right.
So you grew up in New Jersey, and tell me a little bit more as a kid, as a teen. So what kind of led you from the process? What was like as younger years, if you guys understand psychology at a higher level, a lot of your younger years inflict how successful you're going to be. As like it or not, a lot of your when you're growing up, your neural pathways are being made. So that's why a lot of people that have
Right.
bad childhood trauma become successful because they're always looking to seek validation or always trying to become the best because they were never praised for their actions. And my psychology will understand that. Tell me a little bit more about your place in your life. Kind of tell me about what type of sports you play. Were you in business at the time? Did you start any side hustles? Tell me a little bit more about that time.
Yeah, I think, growing up, I grew up into a middle class family. We definitely never wanted for anything, but we weren't rich by any means. We didn't buy brand new cars. We didn't have a new car every year or anything. I lived in the same house for my entire life. My parents were older. I was very blessed because they were very financially secure because they were older, and so that led to that feeling of security. And grew up going to church every Sunday. So I mean, the faith background was really important to us, although I wouldn't necessarily consider us like super practicing, just faithful, Catholics. I was an altar server and all that. I played sports as a kid. I was into soccer. I went to a very prestigious private Catholic all boys school in Morristown, New Jersey, a school called Del Barton that, later on I would find out was as expensive going there as it was college tuition. So, I mean, we were definitely, you know, uh, I guess we'd say upper middle class, and my parents really valued education. And so, in some ways, you can see that expectation for excellence was kind of placed upon me. You didn't just kind of settle for things. You always, you strove to do your best. Is kind of some of the things that my parents instilled in me. When I was in school, I got good grades. I was never like the most popular kid, but I was kind of friends with everybody and had good relationships. I grew up in a town where we were able to, kind of old school latchkey in some ways, where we could just go ride our bikes around town for hours. We would play, street hockey in the streets. We would play, baseball. We would just go ride our bikes all around town and just hang out unsupervised. So I think that instilled a lot of independence for me. I definitely didn't grow up with helicopter parents at all. And when I was a freshman in high school, my father passed away unexpectedly after
Sorry to hear
complications
that.
from a broken ankle. And so, obviously, at those formative years throughout high school, not having a father, I'm sure there were impacts there. But at the end of the day, I think I just always found myself wanting to do my best, wanting to get good grades, and that kind of came naturally to me. And again, I wasn't the most popular kid in high school, but I was friends with everybody. So I think that lesson was important, to that it wasn't about popularity for me. It was just more about, you know, being a good person, kind of in general. I still had a very strong faith at that time, and my faith was growing in high school, to the point where I went to college to study theology, and that you can start to see the path towards, youth ministry. And I was in youth ministry for a little over a decade before I left it. And so I think all of those things kind of served me, and I continue to see the results of those formative years, of all that. Just a good family household, a good, good upbringing, and just always striving to kind of replicate that and to honor that, I guess.
I love the man. Yeah, and and I think that's key also, just following your faith, following your belief systems necessarily.
Mm,
And when you understand that, you understand you can't control a lot of things. And I feel like we miss that in the world, especially with all the things that are going on. And we're always getting thrown stuff from media, from everything, from new politics, from it's just, there's so much stuff. AI. We're having this generation. We're always facing something new. COVID. We've probably seen a lot of stuff, and when you understand that sometimes you can't control something, and sometimes you believe and you have faith in one particular thing, you'll be able to not only settle but understand that you can do things, and some things might be out of your control, but you still be able to grow, you still be able to adapt, and
yeah.
no matter what happens you can keep moving forward, which is key, and that's what you learned in childhood.
Yeah, and I think another thing to point out is that I was kind of, I get whether it's because my dad died or not, but like I was just kind of drawn towards independence. And so early on, I mean, I had a job when even before I had a job, like in middle school. I remember having like a side gig of like making these plastic bracelets and selling them, or buying pogs and selling those. I remember, and being a freshman, getting a job as a lifeguard, working at church, doing music, being a bus boy at a local restaurant. And so I had, that stuff all going on throughout high school. And I think it was a sense of independence that I really enjoyed, financially, because now I had my own money. But also just, I was just kind of always, master of my own schedule. Whether that I had to keep my own schedule, let my parents know when soccer was happening, when I needed a ride to work, where I was going to be. So I was thankful that I had a lot of freedom to do that and to kind of grow. I guess maybe that was part of being an only child. But yeah, having that independence, I think, has definitely done a lot for me, as now I'm a business owner.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it got me into entrepreneurship. I got into business at 13.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you the thing is I grew up with no parents, so I've been independent since about 13, and I started living on my own officially 15, 16, paying my
Wow.
own rent, stuff like that. And once you get that, especially as a young age, you mature much faster than your peers. You'll be able to adapt, and that adaptation. I know I can move across the country and figure something out. I just have the
Exactly.
skill to.
Exactly. You learn that whatever happens, I'll figure it out. The world keeps spinning.
And that's key. And especially in entrepreneurship, that's what kind of builds your backbone on entrepreneurship. When you have the ability to put yourself back in the wall, take accountability of your schedule, of your actions, and being able to do that, you can change your life. And I love the book from Jocko Williams. I don't think you've read it. And
I haven't, but
he
I've
talked.
definitely listened to a lot of Jocko, and I can just imagine. So go ahead, tell me what it says.
No, yeah, personal accountability. I listened
Mm,
briefly to his audiobook. It was when I was running one day, and he talks about it very briefly. He's like, is taking actions. Most people can't do this. Most people, he says it a different way, but most people don't have the integrity to say, I'm going to do this. In the Navy SEALs, they
mhm,
teach you the only person you have to blame yourself if you don't win is yourself. And once we
mhm,
learn that at a young age, sports helps with that, everything, you become unstoppable.
mhm,
So I want to kind of transition, man. I know as a salesperson, it's you only get paid commission. How do you handle stress? This is going to be a unique question. How do you handle stress, and how do you have the ability when you know everything's falling apart? Because as you know, sales, business, everything's always falling. You're always handling these big problems. How do you have the ability to do that at a comfortable level?
I think that's a great question because I think stress is not something that you have the ability to handle as though it's a skill set that once I know how to read, now I can read. Once I know how to ride a bike, I can ride a bike. Once I know how to dribble a soccer ball, I can dribble it. Like, it's not a skill that you acquire and then it's always yours. It's an ever evolving skill. So I like how you put it. How do you handle stress? It depends. It depends in the moment. And I think what I would say for someone to wanting to grow that muscle of handling stress is to put yourself in stressful situations and gradually build that. Kind of building on what we are talking about earlier about, childhood development and that sort of a thing. What I try to do with my kids is put them in situations where they can fail and fail safely. So as
Mm,
simple as, my kid wants to, she wants pancakes. Okay, go make them. Well, I don't know how to do it. All right, well, I'm going to sit in the kitchen and do my work, do my emails. Here's the box, read the directions. And then she looks at me and she says, "Okay, what do I do first?" Read the directions. And it's like, even just the step of reading the directions, right? For entrepreneurs, you want to be an entrepreneur. You heard all the buzzwords, you listen to Gary Vee, you listen to Jocko, Goggins, all that stuff. You're like, oh, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur. What do I do first? And it's like, read the directions. And you're like, okay, but
yeah,
what do I do first? It's like, no, stop, read the directions. What are you passionate about? And like the basic stuff that people don't want to go through, it's like stop and do it. And so, having her learn how to make pancakes, it's just allowing her to fail, allowing her to ask questions, allowing her to feel the stress of I don't know what to do. Where's the answer? And but at least worst case scenario, I know my dad's right here. If I have a question, I can ask him. If the pancake starts smoking, he's here and he can okay, move it from the burner and put it over to the side because it's going to burn. It's too and being able to do that in a way that's not, you're doing it wrong. It's burning. Come here, give me that. And I grab it from her and I fix everything right
yeah,
away. It's just, and that's hard. That's really hard as a parent to
it
do
is.
because you're always stressed anyway. And I think that's an example of why I feel called to coach and mentor and help brokers and people who want to learn sales and stuff because I just have developed that muscle to handle the stress of when someone's freaking out and Tom, tell me what to do. I'm like, do this, and then if something breaks or something happens, like we just had, we're in the middle of a closing right now. I'm getting text messages and emails that, we should be closing on this deal that's going to be, 80,000 plus dollars commission to the brokerage. And, things are happening left and right. And the broker's like, Tom, what's happening? We're missing a signature. It's okay.
It's good.
Send a
Take the
text
jury.
message. Send an email. Yeah, exactly. And so the reason I can handle stress on my best day in a good way is because I've had many episodes of stressful things, that I'm like, okay, it'll be better. Now, once I hit either a threshold because of volume, I have too much stress. That's where I fall into the vices. Usually, it's like eating, bad stuff or watching too much Netflix and that sort of a thing. And that's kind of how I can tell, okay, dude, you need to rest because you're slacking on some other thing. Anger, I get angry at my kids like really fast, and and so self-awareness is really important. So it could be because of volume, or it could be because it's another challenge that we don't know what to do. I'm really excited to be announcing that this year we're going to hold the first aircraft sales summit. We're trying to bring together 10 to 20 people for a very private mastermind kind of group of, if you want to be a salesperson, like, this is what we're going to do. And so I have no idea how that works. I don't know how to pitch that, promote that, market it, build that. And so I'm stressed because it's a higher threshold than I've been against. So it could be volume, it could be a threshold, but ultimately, when I find myself most able to handle stress is when I have a disciplined lifestyle. I just got done about not quite a month ago with the 75 hard program.
Yeah.
And that is full of stress. It's 2 workouts a day. It's following a meal plan for yourself. It's reading 10 pages a day. And then I started going into phase 1, which is like the next step after 75 days. And they throw in things like you got to take a 5-minute cold shower every day. You've got to complete 8 critical tasks every single day, and it kind of levels it up. And when I'm most disciplined and putting myself in those little tiny stressful situations, like, okay, how am I going to get 2 workouts? How am I going to discipline myself in what I'm eating? Then when a big chunk comes in, my kid's freaking out because of something, my wife's freaking out because of something, my client's freaking out because of something. I'm just like, all right, let's go. I've disciplined my mind that when something happens, when I'm stressed, whether it's physically with exercise or mentally, whatever, the mind has been shaped that it can withstand up to a certain threshold. And then that's where growth comes in, is when we can push past those thresholds.
Yeah, I agree, and it's building up that tolerance. It's just like anything else. It takes
Mhm.
time. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to put
No.
yourself in those situations where you might fail, and you have to be okay with it. I feel like, and what helps with me a lot is, since I've already dealt with a lot of stressful situation at a young age, I can tell
Mhm.
you that when you have the confidence that it's nothing, I've dealt with worse things. When you have the confidence to any room and you can do that, you'll change your life. And one of the simplest ways is just getting rid of the output. So just worrying about your inputs, worrying, am I disciplined? Am I putting
Mm.
those calls in?
Mhm.
Am I doing that podcast? Am I making that content? Am I sending those emails out? Am I handling my business the right way? Those tiny things stack up. And once you stack up those tiny wins and you stack up those stressful wins, what happens is you have an iron belt under you. And when you have that iron belt, you become Iron Man. So it's
Yeah,
I
yeah.
100% agree.
I would say 2 things for me is very, very concrete. Like, my wife, she's my best friend, and I feel like in her eyes, there's nothing I can do where she won't love me. She might be mad at me, she might get disappointed at me, she might be sad,
Yeah.
but she'll always love me. And so having someone in your life like that, I think, is crucial, whether it's your partner, your spouse, or a best friend, or a parent. I mean, they're usually pretty good at that. And then at the same time, like God, like my faith, like I truly believe that having, that perspective of like, okay, you could lose $100,000. I mean, when I first started, like, I mean, I used to own a 172. I sold it for 100 grand. And that money is basically gone through the building of this business. Um, could I have handled it better? Maybe. But at the end of the day, like, $100,000 is gone. Some people think like, oh, if I just could get a check for 100 grand, like, I'd be set for life. But people who have money, they understand that like 100 grand is nothing. So I literally got a check for 100 grand for my plane, and a year later, like, it's not there. It's been used. And
Mhm.
and having that perspective of just like, this is not all there is to reality. This is not all there is to the world. This is not all there is to relationships. Um, you know, Grounded in faith, I think it really helps, when it comes to handling the stress, I guess.
Yeah, and I agree. It's going back on the 100,000. A lot of people saying, "Once I make that 100,000," but if you put it over long-term horizon, especially with inflation, most people don't even count how much the U.S. dollar is going down. It's when that comes from financial literacy, like buying assets. Speaking of that, man, what assets do you because in the day and age now, everyone has to have some type of assets. Do you pay attention to that? Are you into real estate or anything like that, or
I'd like to get better on assets. I had a few assets when I was doing, year 2, year 3 in sales and had some extra money to invest. I found 2 things. 2 things I would excuse me, I would say to your audience. Number 1, the very first asset you need to invest in is yourself.
self S&P 500,
That's it.
S&P 500?
Well, no, I'm saying yourself, like
Yeah,
you as an
S&P
individual.
500.
Oh,
The
oh, oh,
S&P 500. It's when you
oh,
yeah, so
I like
instead of
that.
the S&P 500, it's the SME 500,
Oh, I
where you're
like that. I like
investing to yourself, those returns every single day. You're doing the knowledge, you're watching those books, you're reading that podcast,
Yep.
you're investing to those courses, those masterminds in your network. That's the SME 500. That compounding return daily will change your life.
I love that. Yes. So absolutely. So those are that's the biggest asset that I mean, I was investing tens of $1,000s into myself in training and groups and stuff like that. So that was the first thing I invested. Then I started investing in some other things, tried some mutual funds, grabbed a couple of Bitcoin. So I have like some of that stuff, but it's really not making a ton. Um, and then I want to get into real estate. I want to get into assets. My wife wants us to buy a new house. I'm cool with that, but I don't want to do it at the expense of selling a house that is, relatively, in really good terms because we bought it at a good time. So those are things that are kind of on my mind. I had the airplane for a while. I sold some of my assets in the last year and a half because I'm investing back into this business, which, hopefully becomes an asset in the next few
That's it.
years.
Yeah, and that's great. At least you understand terminology. Most people don't even understand. Like you need something as close. And I'd say I love people who focus on one thing is better than having multiple things. Like you can have all the assets in the world, and more than likely your business is your baby, so you're putting all the attention in. That's all that
Right.
matters.
Yep.
When people first start in the business, they're starting this business, they're having this side hustle, they're having this multiple thing. They're not singular focused, and I wish I found this sooner when I started at 13. Is I tried e-commerce, Amazon, like for 2.5 years, I could have saved myself the struggle from just focusing on one thing, going all
Mhm.
in, and having the confidence in yourself. And that comes from investing to yourself, investing into who you are, investing into your knowledge, investing into courses, and investing into the person you can become. I always say I want to work for myself in 10 years. And I already work for myself, but you're working for yourself literally.
Mm.
Even if you have a job at the moment, you're working for the future you. The
Yep.
daily actions you put in today are going to be for yourself later. All the actions, the situation you're right now, the financial situation, where you're at in life, is the cause and effect of the actions you made 10 years ago, from the
Mhm.
actions you made 3 years ago. No matter if it wasn't your fault, you should take full responsibility. And I think you understand that, man, because a lot of people don't understand. I have to do this. I have to take action. I have to take accountability. So I love that. So I want to go in. I know you have to go soon, man. But
Mhm.
Tom, all right. So Tom, I want to learn more about your aviation. I want to go a little bit more. We understand like your background, stuff like that. I want to go in. How has aviation, like the stuff you've learned, because I'm not an expert in the field. I remember looking into it when I was selling something in the past, and I was building out teams and stuff, and I kind of found your number on YouTube. And we're going to go in that a little bit later on the content, which you excel at. You're really good at SEO. I found that out about you. You're really good at optimizing, niching down, and you already know a lot about content creation. You follow a lot of Gary V stuff. You probably went through a lot of courses, materials, because you know what you're doing. You're very optimized in that
Oh, thank
aspect.
you.
No
I
problem.
like to think I know what I'm doing, but you never know.
No, you're really good. I've studied a lot of people, a lot of big brands and stuff. The riches are in the niches, and you're full niche down. It's so crazy because the people that make the most money aren't the people that are well known. You'll be surprised. I know this a
Mhm.
lot. The people that make the most money are the boring niche down things that you'd never expect, like the plumbing podcast with the guy that runs a multi-million-dollar
I
plumbing.
know, right? Yeah, 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 for sure.
So I want to go in that aspect. How has aviation like learning the terminology? How can the average person just like find out about this stuff?
Well, unfortunately, it's hard. When I first started 4 years ago, I mean, that's exactly where I was. I didn't know anything about aviation. I didn't know the difference between a Gulfstream and a Cessna, or a twin engine versus a single engine piston versus a jet turbine. I didn't realize jet and turbine were the same thing. Like it was a whole different world, and there was nothing online. And if there was something online, it was usually from the manufacturer, and it was like a manual or a tech spec, or it just told you, this thing cruises at 325 knots. I'm like, what the heck is a knot? Like, tell me miles per hour. It goes 1600 nautical miles. I'm like, how long is a nautical mile? Like, it just, everything I could find. I'm not a gearhead. I'm not into cars. I'm not into like specs. Computers, I can kind of geek out a little bit on. I do enjoy that kind of stuff, but I'm just not like a gearhead when it comes to like cars and stuff. So a lot of the information that was out there about private jets was more geared towards the gearhead part of it. Like, here's the engine TBO and here's the landing gear overhaul. And I couldn't make sense of it. So that's why I created, our Jet Life Aero Circle community and my Jet Life boot camp. So that if you want to be a broker, like the first thing we teach you is how does aviation work? And that includes, why do people buy jets? Why do people sell jets? Who buys and who sells? How do brokers make money? How does an aircraft work? What is an engine? What's an EFIS? What's avionics? What's, all this stuff, we go through and we've packaged it and we put it in a way so if you want to become a broker, you can find it out. And now, fortunately, because I think there's a difference between wanting to learn about airplanes as like general aviation, and then there's a difference between learning about business aviation and business jets. And that's kind of where I kind of focus on, is the business jet, because there's just really not a lot of content out there. And if there is content, it's geared towards buyers, and it's not really geared towards people who want to learn the industry. And that's where, like you said, we're trying to. Last summer, I remember very vividly listening to Blue Oceans, and just learning the concept of looking for the blue oceans versus the red oceans. And I'm like, I can't compete with Guardian Jet and O'Gara Jets and all these big players, you know, but there's a whole blue ocean over here of people who want to learn how to become brokers. Let me go swim in there and see what I can do, and make the knowledge more accessible.
I love that. Yeah. And I want to go a little bit more. So, what's the difference between a business aviation and then like the business aviation side, and also regular aviation for the average person that doesn't know?
Yeah, so general aviation is geared towards, guys that own a plane. It's usually a single engine, and it's usually what you would consider like it could be a high wing like a Cessna 172. It could be a low wing like a Cirrus SR-22. It's usually 2 to 4 people in there, maybe a six passenger if you go into like a Cherokee or something like that. But it's usually guys that kind of hang out at the local airport that, a big commercial jet's not going to fly into. These are airplanes that'll go 2 3 hours at about 100 and 100 miles an hour, and they seat 2 to 4 people. It's got one engine, and they can be as old as from the 70s all the way to brand new ones. And those things can cost 50 grand all the way up to $500,000 depending on what's in there. But it's general aviation. It's owner operators. These are guys that just kind of fly for fun, or they have a reason to, but they're just smaller planes. Business aviation gets into business jets that are usually at least $500,000. They can seat 6 people in there. They've usually got at least 2 engines, and these are turbine engines. So the general aviation is usually propellers, big spinny things. The turbine engines are like little tiny, like 100 these fan blades that are like a jet, like a rocket almost. And so that's what a business jet is like. So at least $500,000 all the way up to 30 million, 60 million for the brand new ones, the Gulf Streams and that sort of a thing. But there's a wide range within there. There's the light jets that I kind of deal with. There's the old light jets. There's the ultra long range ones that can go from California to Rome in a hop. So it's a wide range, but it's more geared towards some people fly their own jets, but it's more geared towards people who use jets for business because they need more speed, they need more range than you would typically get in general aviation. And then obviously in between there, you've got turboprops that kind of fill both needs, where if you want to fly your own plane, but you want to go faster, you want two engines, you can go into a multi-engine turboprop. So there's a wide range of aviation for sure.
So, so I want to go in. Yeah, it's a lot of keywords, a lot of stuff I didn't know, but I'm sure a lot of people will understand if they're in aviations. And I hope I do come and find people that are in aviation. If you're watching this, feel free to reach out to Tom. I know I remember I reached out to you, man. I was at the time. I think it's like a year, 2 years
Yeah.
ago, almost
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
year. I
I
actually
think you
went to
were
go.
surprised that I actually called you. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like
So if you guys don't know, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I was in high school and I was on the line. I was selling high ticket stuff from this company. It was more like a broker thing, and I called Jeff like, "Hey, I thought I had someone. Turns out I didn't know what I was doing. I was an expert in the field." And I called up Tom and I was like, "Yo, how does this work? I've seen your videos looking up how to do private aviation. He's very welcoming. I'm sure if you reach out to Tom, you have a deal with him or something like that." He'll answer, he'll reply. He's a great guy. So I want to go out and Tom, I want to ask you. So, like, what are the type of high net worth individuals you meet on a daily basis, and how does that, like, how do you personally, and then how does people you're letting into your brokerage, learn teaching people how to do it? How do you teach them to work with these high net worth individuals? How do you give them the ability to kind of learn that skill? Is this more of like a specialized knowledge? Is working with people that are highly extremely wealthy. If you can buy a jet, you have at least I'd say almost 3 to 100 million net worth because what
Yeah.
they're doing, they're buying time back. So
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So like you can look at it from the perspective of, first of all, how do we get in contact with these people? And so there's two ways that we contact our owners and our buyers. So the buyers usually are coming either from a listing that we have. So they go to controller.com, which is kind of like Zillow for private jets, and they want to buy a jet. If they know about controller, they're they're reasonably qualified because not everybody knows about controller, right? It's not as ubiquitous as Zillow and real estate. So if you know about controller or trade a plane and you call me from that, I know you're reasonably qualified to buy a jet because you actually know where to go to look. So that's one way to find a buyer. The other way to find a buyer who are less qualified are like YouTube. I get a lot of inquiries, probably get 2 or 3 phone calls a week of people who find me through social media like, hey, I'm thinking about buying a jet. Like, let's talk. So I'm like, great, let's go. As far as the owners and like how do you find inventory, we teach a couple different ways to do it in the course. And actually, we have a free course where people can learn how to do all this stuff for free. But we as professional jet brokers, we have access to a database that has the owner information or some contact information to try to get to the owner. So we will cold call owners. Hey, my name's Tom. I know you probably get these calls all the time. I'm not here to waste your time. Just hoping to catch you at the right time. Are you looking to sell your citation? I'd love to help you out and tell you what the market's doing. And it's, then we kind of go from there with our sales script and how to, handle the objections and that sort of a thing. But yeah, that's how we find people to talk to. And then in terms of how do we talk to them, we do put a premium on understanding that these people are successful individuals. They are very busy and they are master negotiators. So that is why we train on a daily basis. Tuesdays and Thursdays we do role playing, and then Mondays and Wednesdays we do um, we do kind of training that's more generic training, like, here's the market trends and here's how you do that kind of stuff so that we're well-rounded professionals. So if somebody asks, them, well, what do you think about this, about this new, what's going on with Boeing? How's that going to impact it? Or how's the election going to impact this year, the pricing? So we have those trainings on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then Tuesday and Thursday, we do the role play so that people actually get, they actually get what we're trying to do. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, but I'm happy to answer any follow-ups.
no, yeah, and I do think it's just like a lot of people don't realize. Like I feel like these people are busy, but once you get a hold, like I feel like it's easier to contact a billionaire if you can get like you can find them because they're really hard to find. They're very
Mhm.
productive, they're very successful people,
Yep.
and most likely they won't even call you. From what I've seen, like I've they will only text. Like billionaires text, so their time is everything.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
once you
true.
have fun on it, and I understand that from a higher level, it's like once you become successful, people like my problems are going to be solved. You're once you become successful, you're going to have a lot more problems. So
Mhm,
the
mhm.
problems you have in life is correlation how much you make. Now, sometimes some people's problems are higher. Like my business is losing 12.5 million today. That's not the average problem, but if you have that problem, that's a good problem to have. So
Mhm.
I love that, man. So I want to go in a little bit more about your personal daily. What's your productivity routine? I'm kind of like a productivity country. Junkie. I take nootropics. I do a lot of vitamins, cold showers. I do a lot of working out, health stuff like that. What's your personal routine, Tom?
Well, I would say, right now I'm kind of in a lull because the last 2 weeks I had, some health stuff, just like colds and whatnot. So I wouldn't say now is my best. But when I was doing 75 hard a few weeks ago, I mean, it was a pretty good routine. I usually got a morning workout, waking up around 4:30 in the morning and getting a workout or something in, and then take the kids to school, get to the office by 8, 9 o'clock. When I'm doing my best work, I come in and I write down, what needs to be done, in the notebook for the day, and just kind of focus on that. Setting up Calendly and setting up, time for calls to be made, and calendar blocking has been big. When I'm most productive, I have 2:30, 3:30. That's power hour where I'm going to be making phone calls. Like I need to make sure that is honored and that's sacred. 10:30 in the morning, I have my sales calls with my brokers, so that's honored and that's sacred. So, keeping my calendar full, and even if there's nothing there, like just knowing what am I going to do in this time. um I take time for myself. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I was started to train some martial arts, some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which has been kind of cool, just for the past few weeks. Again, mostly because of the 75 hard disciplines. And then I'm usually out by about 3 o'clock because I got to take kids to soccer. So, spending that time with my kids is important. We have got about a 45-minute drive to soccer practice, every day. So we're in the car, we're talking, we're watching, Marvel movies or something like that, and just kind of having that shared experience with each other. And then when I get to their fields, I'll usually do another workout, like just go run a mile or something like that. Maybe get some work done in the car if I need to. I'll take any phone calls I need to take, and then just get home, uh, spend some time with my wife, and by then it's about 9 or 10 o'clock. It's ready for bed, and do it all over again. So that's kind of what it looks like. I take a supplement called Juice Plus that's been a mainstay of our family for the past couple of years, probably about
What
10
is it?
years or so now. It's called Juice
What
Plus. It's just fruits and vegetables in a capsule. So it's kind of like our multivitamin. We just get it from fruits and vegetables instead of sucking out the vitamin C from the orange. We just get oranges. And yeah, that's been pretty much that's when I'm kind of at my peak performance. But just like like discipline, sometimes you just kind of you let it you let it go for a little bit, and it can be hard to get it back.
It's staying consistent, especially with you have a lot more uh, responsibility. You have kids, you
Yep.
have things you have to take care of, you have a business, you have all these things going on, and then you
Yep.
still make time. And I love the fact that you talk about calendar. So like you want as a business owner, you want to find the things that are going to move the needle. What is that one thing I try to always find in my calendar? I do a lot of calendar stacking. I plan everything. If you're
Hmm.
not tracking, you're slacking. I track the amount of calories I eat, the protein, the water I drink, from the time I sleep. I don't know if you have an Aura or anything like that. Just tracking everything is key to life. And once you track time, which time is our biggest asset, when you understand that, and how do you buy time back? Because again, we're only on this earth for so long, and I think a lot of people miss that. Like you think one day, you wake up and you're 30, but just yesterday you just graduated high school.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah. I got my 20-year reunion coming up. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah.
it's insane, and it only accelerates as you get older. Time just goes much more faster, and that's perceives perception. I don't know if you ever felt this when you were younger, man, but like time went so slow when you were younger, and the older you
Hmm.
get, it's just because the way you're perceiving things, because you already went through life. So by the time you're 30, time's going to be much much faster. Next thing you know, you're 60. So I want you guys kind of realize that if you're really trying on the edge of starting something, it doesn't have to be aviation, it doesn't have to be a podcast, it could be anything. Just take that action because the older I get, and again, I'm only 19, so I still have a lot more time than the average person. But I will tell you, time's going to go much, much faster. The older you get, you're going to have much less time if you don't take action now, or if you don't build the bone of taking action. You're never going to take action. You say you will, but you never. So I think that's key, man, and you hit that. So before I let you go, man, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. I do appreciate you hopping on. I want to see kind of where people can kind of reach out to you if they're looking to get in aviations, if they're looking to get more info. What are some resources we'll put down below? I'll put your social media and stuff. But where can they reach out to you? And also, what are some resources you'd say for the average salesperson? What would you want them to watch, or what would you want the person that's looking to get aviation but hasn't taken action, or the person that's looking to get high ticket sales? What would you recommend for them, man, to kind of get started today?
So the resources that have been helpful to me um, have been individuals like Gary Vaynerchuk for marketing and understanding the importance. I really appreciate his concept of just being omnipresent, being all over the place. This idea that just do it, like, Think Media with Sean Cannell and just hit record. This idea that you're not going to be great the first time, but you just got to keep showing up. I also really appreciate he's got a new book coming out, Day Trading Attention. This idea of, like, you need to have people's attention. And not only that, but he also preaches a philosophy of kindness and a philosophy of humility. And I think that's really important because it balances this aggressive, I need to be creating content so that I'm relevant, but at the same time, it balances that with humility, and understanding that, like, okay, my content's not going to be great at first, but I'm going to get better and I'm going to keep working at this. So I like Gary Vaynerchuk a lot, for people to check him out. I also like Jeremy Miner with NEPQ. It's a neuro emotional persuasive questions, something along those lines. But Jeremy Miner, NEPQ. I really like his sales training and how he handles sales conversations. I also like Grant Cardone and his sales training. I started out with Grant Cardone like way back, and I just really appreciated his energy and his drive and his, like, no nonsense. And then I did a lot of his training and I found success. I made six figures based on his training. But what I found was I was doing his training and then I would tweak it for me, so that it was a little bit more natural for me. And then when I came across Jeremy Miner's NEPQ stuff only about 3 months ago, and I listened to it and I went to a couple of his free webinars, I was like, holy crap, it's similar to Grant Cardone's, like, framework, but
It's just newer.
that and all the tweaks that I was making so that it wasn't so Cardone stuff wasn't coming off as salesy and
Salesy,
as
yeah.
aggressive. It was basically what Jeremy was doing with his NEPQ, with the questions that he was asking and the tonality. All that stuff had kind of come natural to me. And I just, and it was funny because when I first started training my brokers, we were doing Cardone stuff and I was just telling them the Cardone stuff and I was having my own tonality in there, but I wasn't, like, drawing attention to that. And then when I started doing the NPQ stuff, I liked the questions better, but then I also was able to explain to them, like, okay, here's why Cardone stuff's working for me. And in fact, Alex, one of our most active brokers, the one who's trying to close something today, he still uses the Cardone script and he's finding great success. So it's not like one or the other, but these are just two other sales things that have been really helpful for me.
No, yeah, and another thing is I actually went through NAPQ, and I'll put the link down below. I have access to it. You guys can get it for free. I know a couple people that make a lot of sales training and resources, so I'll put the link down below in the podcast. And I want you guys to realize that the new way of selling is unique, and Jeremy talks about this. The
Mhm.
old way of selling was pushy, salesy, stuff like that. Now it's more of question-based, consulting, more
Mhm.
not as aggressive selling. And the new way of selling, you're doing it more, it's more submissive, it's more unique, it's soft touching, it's asking the right questions, and he talks about that. And once you understand that, the new modern age of selling, most people are used to you hopping on the phone and no one wants that call, no one wants that sales
Yeah.
call. So when you can detach yourself from that way of selling, you become dangerous. And I feel like you hit that point also when you understand that. A lot of people don't understand that, which I'm surprised.
Well,
As
yeah. Yeah, and so those are the main, like, resources that I would recommend for people. But if you want to get into aviation sales, I would definitely recommend checking out Jet Life Aero. You go to jetlifeaero.com and there's a tab up there that says sell jets. Learn more about what we do as a brokerage. But then I would say, even more importantly, check out circle.jetlifeaero.com, because that's our free circle community. And you go in there and it's just like any other social media platform. We've got discussions where you can ask questions. We've got listings that you can take a look at and ask questions on there. We've got free training programs. Aviation changed my life. And so I want to make all that information available to people for free. I don't ever want to stand in front of and stand in the way of somebody changing their life through aviation because they have to get paid, So it's there. I do also offer a course if you want to learn how to be a jet broker and have it all spelled out for you with documents and the agreements and everything, the whole package that you need to get started. You can do the course. I have one-on-one training that you can sign up for. And then, of course, if you want to work with me on a yearly basis, we've got a coaching package for the entire year where you're going to pay, a fraction of what you're going to make. The goal is for you to make six figures in your first year. And so that's kind of what we're looking for.